Thanks for the introduction and good afternoon to everyone joining our virtual Nuffield conference, especially to those of you who are joining from overseas, who I believe are quite a number. As Tom just highlighted, I'm a dairy farmer from the southwest of Scotland with a keen interest in helping shape a prosperous UK dairy industry. So with some pretty major global fundamentals hanging in the balance, we ask ourselves, where do we want our industry to be in 25 years' time? Firstly, we need to have a basic understanding of where the British dairy industry currently is. As UK dairy farmers, we are reaching new levels of efficiency and output. 2019 saw a 30-year high in milk production at 15 billion litres. However, this is dominated by high volume but relatively low value liquid milk. At the same time, we have seen significant consolidation of milk processing capacity across the UK, but particularly in Scotland. Although the UK domestic market will always be key to British agriculture, UK dairy exports are growing year on year, albeit from an extremely low base. But look at this, of our total dairy exports, 62% is exported as fresh milk and cream. And where to? Most of it, in fact, 2/3 of it, to our neighbours in Ireland. What's happening here is Ireland is buying our distressed, cheap seasonal milk because we have insufficient processing capacity to balance seasonal supply. They're adding value to it and then selling it back to us or re-exporting it around the world. Seems absolutely crazy. Ireland last year bought 66% of our exports in volume terms, but that only equated to 29% in value. So where are the global export opportunities for dairy? My Nuffield travels kicked off last October in China, before then visiting Japan and then the extremely exciting and rapidly advancing economies of Vietnam and Indonesia. I then explored Dubai's high-end retail market before exploring the lessons and learnings of one of the world's most dominant dairy export nations, New Zealand. Upon arriving in China, I joined around 80 of the world's leading industry experts and dairy farmers at the Global Dairy Farmers Congress in Beijing and Harbin. Rabobank's lead economist, Professor Sandy Chen, predicted that Chinese dairy demand will find a new norm in the next decade, still seeing growth. Upon arriving in China, I joined around 80 of the world's leading dairy industry experts and dairy farmers at the Dairy Farmers Congress, World Global Dairy Farmers Congress in Beijing and Harbin. Rabobank's lead dairy economist, Professor Sandy Chen, predicted that Chinese dairy demand will find a new norm in the next decade, still seeing growth of around 2.5%, although much lower than the last decade. A lower rate of volume growth maybe, but a focus on higher value dairy. Professor Li Shengli, dairy specialist at China Agricultural University in Beijing, explained the decade-long boom in large-scale industrial dairying in China. Interestingly, 50% of Chinese dairy farms have no land, leading to huge forage supply and effluent issues and contributing to an exceptionally high cost of production system. New Zealand's farmer-owned co-op and dominant global dairy player Fonterra has experienced unprecedented growth in the Chinese market in the last decade or so. Christina Zhu, who headed up Fonterra's China business, explained their growth story. 10 years ago, China was a dumping ground for the world's surplus standardized milk powders. However, Chinese consumers are evolving rapidly and getting as close to them as possible is key, she explained. Nowadays, it's all about constant product innovation, premiumization, and digital food. They don't eat or drink first, they photograph it and post it on WeChat or Instagram. But on the flip side, Fonterra are currently going through a major shake-up and offloading numerous overseas ventures that have gone sour, mostly in the value-add consumer-facing sector of the business, but also including their 8 Chinese farms, totaling 40,000 cows, which are widely regarded as having made irrecoverable losses. I visited Yutan 2 farm and can clearly see why. And chatting with Fonterra farmer members in New Zealand, it seems that their global strategy at points has been pitched too high in the dairy value chain at the consumer end, when bulk commodity and technical ingredients have been the co-op's cash cow. As one Kiwi farmer put it to me, Fonterra's capital structure has not been sufficient to support these risky overseas ventures into high-value branded products. They've been leaning on farmer members' balance sheets rather than running overseas ventures as separate capital entities. So do domestic Chinese farms ever have the ability to meet growing demand for dairy products? I visited a number of both privately owned and publicly listed dairy farms, including one of China Modern Dairy's 25,000 cow units. All farms were well invested in high-cost housed systems, but huge challenges were commonplace around forage sourcing and some significant underlying cow health issues. The assumption that large industrial dairies are automatically efficient is far from reality. So how do foreign dairy companies navigate the Chinese market successfully? Well, Arla are doing just that. I spent a day with Snorri Sigurdsson, who heads up the China-Denmark Milk Technology Cooperation Centre on the edge of Beijing, a joint venture between Arla and Chinese dairy giant Mengyu. Ultimately, this JV is about keeping the door open for European dairy products to flow into the Chinese market. And it is certainly delivering for Arla members in the form of a strong European member milk payout. Arla evidently have a truly global reach. In fact, I could find Arla products on supermarket shelves everywhere I went: China, Japan, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the UAE. All a result of Arla seeking out JV partners with existing market integration. In 2015, the global dairy giant Nestle invested $20 million building the Nestle Dairy Farming Institute, China's leading dairy education centre with a 1,300 cow model farm. It's to train and educate the whole Chinese dairy industry and lift the level of on-farm technical efficiency. This is Nestle's contribution to China's dairy development and ultimately to facilitate market access for both dairy and coffee products. Have you spotted the recurring theme yet? Fonterra, Arla and Nestle all investing in China to keep the international trade corridors open. Demand for dairy in Southeast Asia is set to surge over the coming decade, and this is where it gets really exciting. The combined dairy import deficit of the ASEAN 6, that's Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, is set to reach 19 billion litres per year by 2030, eclipsing that of China, the current largest dairy importer. So why should this be? Firstly, I met with Elaine Canny, country chairman of Jardine Matheson, a Scottish multinational conglomerate, now with business interests all over Asia, including Vinamilk. Elaine explained Jardine's socio-economic reasoning for strategically investing in Vinamilk. The rapid advance of Vietnam's middle-class population, they're more health conscious and have a hunger for varied protein sources, particularly dairy. It's seen as a health promoter. Dairy is a huge growth area, he explained. So what is Vinamilk's strategy for securing dairy supply globally? When I met with 3 of Vinamilk's directors at their headquarters in Ho Chi Minh City, they spoke of a number of strategic investments to secure product, a European product sourcing team in Poland, and a recent investment in one of New Zealand's newest dairy processing sites, Maraca. I followed up on Vinamilk's strategic investment when visiting Waikato in central New Zealand in March of this year. An incredibly impressive greenfield dairy processing site using surplus heat from a geothermal power station nearby to dry milk. Maraca is a Maori-owned dairy project specialising in a range of technical milk powders and UHT milk products for export to Asia. With Java Island being one of the most densely populated places on Earth, it's no surprise Indonesia is experiencing double-digit growth in demand for dairy just now. I met with a number of food manufacturers, Yummy Foods, Shimroy Mountain Dairy and Diamond Foods. All 3 are securing dairy ingredients from global markets to suffice the ever-growing dairy import deficit. The capital city, Jakarta, is the most challenging place I've ever visited. Certainly not a holiday destination, but an excellent place to do a Nuffield research project on consumption drivers of dairy. I flew out to Malang in East Java to spend a couple of days exploring Nestle's smallholder milk collection centre model. Now, I've been to all kinds of dairy farms across the world, but this household dairy model was strangely probably the most inspiring. Many still hand milking cows, some recently installing basic vacuum line systems. All deliver their milk in steel churns to the local collection centre where it can be then tankered to Nestle's factory. While I thoroughly enjoyed this experience, it's clear that there are at least 2 generations behind at farm level, while dairy demand in megacities such as Jakarta surges. So after 10 weeks of international travel, summarised in 10 minutes, let's draw some conclusions to all of this. From a UK dairy industry perspective, it's clear that growing demand for dairy in developing regions is the big opportunity here. The challenge is successfully navigating the highly competitive global marketplace. However, the nature of demand in Asia will find a new norm in the next decade. A rapid surge in demand from Southeast Asia will eclipse that of China. And this study hasn't even touched on Africa or the Indian subcontinent. In all of these key regions of growth, domestic milk production will lag well behind demand. The dairy deficit will grow, as on-farm technical efficiency and climate are often not conducive with efficient milk production. However, the UK's dairy sector is technically well placed to compete on a global stage, with a near ideal climate and continued technological and genetic advances at farm level in our favour. But it has never been clearer. British dairying requires significant investment to create balance in milk processing capacity, to bring an element of competition to the retail dominance we experience today, to put some value in the bottom end of our market, and to optimise the whole seasonal profile of UK milk production. This will ultimately allow our dairy farm businesses and rural economies to grow and to prosper. The opportunity is there to convert the valuable fat, protein, and lactose components of milk into forms that can be traded and shipped to anywhere in the world, to be rehydrated or reconstituted and used in literally hundreds of food manufacturing applications. But it's clear there are some significant complexities surrounding international trade and penetration of key markets. Adding value to milk inherently adds cost, so pitching UK processing infrastructure to the optimum point in the dairy value chain is key. Too low in the value chain, and often not enough value can be extracted from commodity markets. And too high, then too much cost is incurred in order to remain relevant in the consumer-facing marketplace. So how do we put the nuts and bolts of this into action? Well, if we look to our friends across the water in Ireland, in Holland and in Denmark and even in New Zealand, they are all successfully pursuing global dairy opportunities. The UK too could be a significant global provider of high-value technical dairy ingredients, specialist milk powders and hydrous milk fat, and a whole range of functional milk proteins, caseinate, whey protein concentrate, and isolate. The list goes on. The range of milk derivatives which are traded globally is astounding. Getting product to market is not the problem here. There are a number of international dairy traders who specialise in the logistics and certification required to shift product. Some of these guys I've met on my field travels and who I'm still in regular contact with. So let's tie it all together. Farmers, we need to expect and accept global market volatility is here to stay, and we're not immune. This is just the natural response to the market dynamics of supply and demand constantly neutralising. We also need a renewed focus on production of milk solids as opposed to just litres of milk. Our milk processors should be looking to invest in the stainless steel required to produce specialist milk powders, high-value technical ingredients, and some globally traded cheeses. Creating a British or even a Scottish global ingredients brand within food manufacture while seeking out win-win joint venture partners who already have the marketing and distribution in place. Our governments need to provide clarity on international trading conditions for the next decade. And if the UK is to be a truly global player, direct funding and tax incentives will be required for dairy ventures willing to invest in international export markets. The economic trickle-down effect into the wider rural economy, farms and beyond, would be unprecedented. As my Nuffield Scholarship draws nearer a close, it actually does feel like the start of an exciting journey. So can I thank my main sponsors, the Food Chain Scholarship and the Young Nuffield Bob Matson Scholarship Award. And also thanks to Nuffield International for sponsoring me, representing them at the Global Dairy Farmers Congress in China. Also, thanks to you all for joining this virtual mini conference, and I look forward to taking any questions.